Hello, this is Mensaflow with another tutorial here. This particular tutorial is prompt accelerators or forms inside the chat box. Now, a lot of times people just chat and want to get information, and that's fine, but maybe you would like to actually put forms in the chat box to collect data, put it in the database for later query by an API. Or you can just leave it in the chat box and query the chat history and then try to sort it out that way. So there's several ways to do that, but we provide this mechanism, what we call prompt accelerators. And in this particular example, what it is we are going to have a prompt accelerator that collects information about a car's vehicle diagnostics and then provide a quote to the user. Now, of course, this is a make-believe situation. It's called Quality Motors, but we're just going to see how this works here. So the thing is, we can initiate this by several mechanisms, but here we're using what we call a slash command called diagnose, and let's see what happens here. Okay, so you get this initial screen here, and it first requires you to have your identity. I'm putting my own Mensaflow email there. I'm going to put in a name of my job that I'm working on, and we'll just call it my car here. You can select type of car. We'll call it a Volkswagen, and it has basically 50 to 90,000 miles. Now, these forms are totally configurable in the back end. We'll show you how that works. So this is kind of an activity you might want to have in terms of the potential problems. You can have a vehicle sound problem, a vehicle dysfunction problem, a vehicle maintenance problem. We're just going to call it a maintenance problem. Now, each one of these has a secondary form behind it, but we're going to see that it's not going to pull up each form. It's going to put up the form that I've checked in kind of an activity situation there. Okay, so now it's going to say, what kind of maintenance do you want? So this is kind of a second level workflow item. We're going to call it an engine maintenance, and I'm going to say I want my oil change. You can also have and he says how many months has it been. We'll just call it 12. You can have audio input as well if you'd like. So we submit this, and now it's going to ask you, do you want to generate an indicative quote? No, you can start over, or yes, I do. And it's going to go off to the AI and give me a quote. And here's my quote, my vehicle maintenance report. There you go. And thank you for choosing Quality Motors. And it's 50 euros. If we call it a couple of the others, that's what we have in the vectorial database is the cost of an oil change. You see that in a couple of the other tutorials we've been using this kind of as an example. And there you go. It provides you a kind of a DB, and it can email it to you. So that's another option that you may have through an API, and we'll see that here momentarily. And you can see here that I had this is the email it sent me, which is interesting here on this particular workflow. In the background, we've also added a situation where it says that not only was it going to give me 50 euros for an oil change, but it's going to suggest other repairs to it. So this is a way that you can augment the potential sales of your company by having the AI provide more suggestions to the customer and says, oh, by the way, you can have this, this, and this. So this is an interesting way to upsell a customer using the AI based upon their input. And we can see this in the back end here under this job. We kind of ignored this in one of the other tutorials, but this jobs will actually show you this was done at this date, and you can show you that here was the prompt in terms of what was asked for. You can see here what was the response in terms of what the oil change was, and finally this was the actual report. And you can also query that by the API as well. There was another section on API that was showing you how to do that. So there you go. You can see how that is all through what we call the prompt accelerators. Of course, that was a kind of a mock situation, but you can change that, and we're going to show you how that in a minute. But first, we'll take a look at kind of the logic behind that. A couple things to understand with the prompt accelerators. It's all generated out of what we call this workflow.json file. It's kind of the logic flow, which is what this blue is trying to show you. It must start with a form init. That's a reserved. These are reserved word, workflow Johnson, and format Johnson's are reserved words. We'll see that in a minute. And the generate is being able to talk to the LLM on a secondary AI query. And the form.johnson can be as many as you want. We'll see that. So you first collect the identity through the email, and it puts it in the jobs table. Check the activity form, and based upon you can have it filtering And then you can have different prompt accelerators for each of those particular items. We had 3, if you recall. A confirmation switch, you can then loop back around and not just, if you have an issue, you can loop back around. Generate and confirmation to stop or not, and you can loop back around again. So basically you can follow whatever logic flow you want. Now this is kind of a complex, not that complex, but fairly complex. But you don't necessarily have to have these 2 levels of, you can go just have one prompt accelerator form. You can have a variety of these things. So there's a lot of ways to mix and match this workflow. Of course, this is inside the chat box. This is not the same as the N8N. This is within the chat box itself, which may or may not be a requirement for your particular case. So let's take a look at this in terms of behind the scenes. Let's look at the prompt accelerators here. We go to the forms configuration here, and you'll see that we'll go to the reserved word of workflow. These are all JSON files, and basically what it's showing you the different format that you can have, and it's basically, this is a sequential workflow. We start up with the workflow. We say this workflow switch is true. Here is our / commands. Here's the helper. If you want the helper, if you want some people, if you want to help, it's kind of like a, if you wish to workflow to help diagnose your vehicle, type /diagnose or whatever language you want, and you can switch that on or off. Here is the form name to start, and we look at the job ID, and of course that goes to the job ID form, and then you work your way to the activity form, the car sound dysfunction. These are just different identifiers of forms. So this is kind of the workflow and the confirmation. Then we go to each individual form. For example, we called the car ID is the activity form, so that's the type form init that we were talking about. So that was a reserved word, and this is just a form. You notice that we have function validators on each field, as well as a validator for the form as well. You can put that in here, and of course those evaluate the true or false. And it can be done in multiple languages if desired. So these are the forms that we build. I'm not going to go through each individual form, but I think you get the idea. Here was the activity form. That's kind of this way to filter on different options, and there's a variety of different function controls you have. Finally, we'll take a look at that generate. This was the generate. So we generate the LLM, and it'll go based upon your workspace LLM. You don't have to use these. This is an option for those that want to have forms. The advantage of here is you can capture this data into a table and then later query it through the API if desired. And it may or may not be useful for your particular business case use case. Anyway, another option for you from Mensaflow. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like video on the